was just so cool, and it was so fierce and powerful, and it was like an animal. It was just like a wild animal that just would go after its prey. I mean, it was just it's spectacular. I tell people that I Forrest Gumped my way into Bullitt Mustang history. Bullitt is a movie from 1968 starring Steve McQueen. It features one of the most amazing car chase sequences ever filmed. It starred, alongside Steve McQueen, it starred a 1968 Mustang Fastback 390 GT. There were actually two Mustangs for the film, and I watched it many, many times. I made notes on the chase scene. I was really just fascinated with it, and it turned out a lot of other people were similarly into that chase scene. And of course, most of these were in the Mustang community, and I was already, by college, I had a 67 Mustang coupe. A lot of these folks were very interested in that car. The general thinking was that it had been crushed. And actually, most of us didn't realize until articles started coming out that there were two Mustangs, two identical Mustangs. But once we even knew that, it was generally understood that they had both been crushed. They had been so, wrecked during the chase scene and stuff that they just went on a truck and straight to the junkyard. And I started thinking that cars from movies were generally just discarded after filming. And I started, in the back of my mind, I did not know how to do any of this detective work at the time. Again, early 80s, going toward the mid 80s. I had no idea how to make this happen. Again, no internet at this time. I didn't know how long places kept records. I didn't know, of registration, that kind of thing. But I just had it always in the back of my mind. And so out of college, I kind of, anybody in the car industry or other car journalists, I would kind of pick their brain about this Bullitt idea. Do you think it's still out there? I mean, the people keep turning up these cars, these rare cars everybody assumed were gone. Do you think it's out there? And could there be a discovery waiting to be had? And how would I go about doing it? What I didn't realize was that fate kind of intended for me to have that story all along. And I just fell completely backwards into it. And here's how. I went to work for McMullen Publishing, specifically Mustang Illustrated magazine. My first week there, I got the copies of the magazine that had, been written and proofed and printed before I even started. Like, I had nothing to do with the issue that showed up on my desk 3, 4, 5 days into my first week there. I opened the box and took it out, and I was like, oh, it's a pretty good cover. What's this? Found Bullitt Mustang on the cover. I had a wide variety of emotions about this. I thought, well, that's amazing that it is out there and somebody, knows where it is. I turned immediately to that story. The photos right away struck me. I realized it was a 1967 Fastback, not a 68. And then there were like 100 other things that were just way wrong with this article, and it was not the Bullitt Mustang. The Bullitt Mustang had not been found. So I was the newest guy in the office. So I got to answer most of the calls that came to the magazine. I got to, retrieve all the letters that came to the magazine. I got about 24 letters complaining about, what are you talking about? Well, this is not the Bullitt Mustang. The Bullitt Mustang was 1968, on and on and on. This is why it's not the Bullitt Mustang. It's kind of dumb that you thought it was the Bullitt Mustang. And phone calls. Our receptionist knew that I was having to put up with a lot with this thing. I think it was late one day. She came by, leaned in, said, I think there's another Bullitt Mustang phone call. Do you want me to just tell him you're not here or whatever? I said, I just felt like I deserved the punishment somehow. So I said, no, go ahead and send him through. So I answered the phone. This man, whose name was Robert Kiernan, he said, that car you featured is not the surviving Bullitt Mustang. I said, yes, sir, I understand. I'm not sure how that happened. I just started working here. I was kind of trying to distance myself from the story, to tell you the truth. And then he said, I know it's not the surviving Bullitt Mustang because I own the surviving Bullitt Mustang. I thought either this is the biggest story I'm ever going to have in my career, or I've got a real nut job on the other end of the phone and he's just going to waste my time, or he's trying to get me involved in some hoax that, he's trying to perpetrate, because that happens. Because I immediately jumped on this and I was like, well, sir, I'd love to, hear more about it. And do you have any pictures and blah, blah, blah. And where do you live? Can I come see it? I was probably a little bossy. I'm surprised I didn't scare him away. This is back in the day. There was no caller ID. And I was just so nervous that he was going to go, you're creeping me out, dude. I'm going away, and I'd never hear from him again. So he said, yeah, I'll work with you. But he said, I don't want people knowing, who I am. He doesn't want people trying to buy it. He doesn't want people calling him. He doesn't want people coming to his house. And he didn't want anybody stealing it. And I did have a little bit of insight from some of my probing questions when we did talk. It had been a little bit banged up, when he got it. In fact, when Bob Ross, the first owner, got it, it was not a flawless 100-point restoration by any means. He literally had no idea that people had been looking for this car for years. He had never picked up a copy of Mustang Illustrated magazine, and he just happened to pick up that one that said, found Bullitt Mustang on the cover, and that's what prompted him to call on a day that I was there answering the phone. And that began the 28-year-long story that I had entirely to myself. So this started in 1991. I got online around 1994, 1995. I would say like 90% of the people who would go online, go to a forum, Mustang forum or whatever, and the topic would come up, 90% absolutely did not believe me. Like either I made it up or the guy made it up and I'm such an idiot that but he shared documentation. I mean, this was not something I just took him at his word. Gosh, I don't know, 4 or 5 days later, in the mail came this envelope from Wicklow Hill Farm in Taylor Mill, Kentucky. It had a copy of the famous letter that Warner Brothers Studio gave to the first owner of the car after it was in the movie, an editor at Warner Brothers by the name of Robert Ross. It had Robert Ross's registration of the vehicle, which marked the first time that we had the VIN for the missing Bullitt Mustang, which was huge. Anybody who really wants to pore over those documents and look at every little detail, every VIN, every registration, how much it costs to repair it after Warner Brothers sent it to a body shop and had the hood replaced and had it repainted and the bumper was replaced and on and on and on. For those down the weeds details, you really want to go to bradbowling.com and click on the Bullitt 559 historian link and see that. Bob sent me just this fat envelope full of stuff that made it quite clear that he was either a genius forger or he was definitely owning the surviving Bullitt Mustang. Now, at this point, let me differentiate. There were 2 Mustangs, and the one that Bob had, the serial number ended in 559, and the other one at the time, we would eventually learn that the other car ended in 558. I mention that now only because both cars, have since come into the public eye. So we refer to the 2 cars by their 559 and 558 BIN. Bob was able to tell me that he had purchased it from a police detective in New Jersey. So as soon as I got this envelope of material, I started making notes. I started putting down all sorts of thoughts about what all I need to do to build out this timeline. I thought, well, I see here that this Bob Ross owned it, really the first owner outside of the studio. He was an editor at Warner Brothers at that time. 20 years earlier, there was still a good chance he was with us, still alive, and still a good chance I could locate him maybe in the Southern California area. So I did. I got him by phone, and he gave me a lot of details. And the very next issue of Mustang Illustrated had a 2-page story, because when you look at it at the time, that's all I had was about 2 pages worth. Showed the documentation and was happy with that. But I knew at the time that it was only the start, that there'd be a lot more to uncover. For a couple of years, that was it. Word was out in the hobby that I had made this discovery. Honestly, at that time, 90% of the people probably did not believe me. And that's fine. I knew this was going to be a lot of work. But Bob, the first owner, told me that he sold it to a police detective in New Jersey and that it had been shipped out by rail, which was pretty common. That's all he knew. He couldn't remember the guy's name. He didn't have any paperwork. It was just a real, kind of on the phone and sign a couple of pages of a contract, and off we went, and he didn't have any of that stuff. For years, I think until 2009, in fact, it was November of 2009, after I had just done another article that went to one of the Mustang magazines, I got this Gmail that said, the subject line read, "Lost Years 1968 Bullitt Mustang, second owner." And the attached message said, "You found me. I owned the Bullitt Mustang from 1970 to 1974. Call this number if you want more details." Again, I have to keep it in mind. Could be a hoax. No, that was not the case. This was the real deal. Frank Maranka was the second owner of the Bullitt Mustang. He was the oracle of Bullitt Mustang knowledge and documentation. What he had laid out on his long dining room table was just, it was a gold mine for documenting the car, and he had kept everything. He was a very disciplined person with his memory and his notes and his timeline for things. So that just built like this huge bridge now that took me from Bob Ross, Frank Maranka, and now Robert Kiernan, at the time the current owner. At this point, it had been 19 years. We printed everything, and people just knew, oh my God, the car is out there. And when is it going to come out to the public? When are we going to get to see it? I tried to contact Robert Kiernan. I was having trouble finding Bob Kiernan at that point. And so, the Bullitt story just kind of went back to sleep at that point. I got contacted all the time by people asking, hey, can you get me in touch with the owner of the Bullitt Mustang? They told me there's a 10% finder's fee. The car's probably, the car will probably change hands for like $2 million. You get 10% of that and all this. And I'm like, dude, he says it's not for sale. I can't do a thing about it. Celebrities, I got calls from representatives of celebrities, and I said, no, not gonna happen. I turned down every offer for money or whatever to put people onto the Bullitt Mustang's owner. And I did not know this at the time because I was no longer in contact with him, but Bob Kiernan passed away in 2014. And I felt like the family would probably be more open to bringing it out in the public. Someone at Ford contacted me to participate in 559's public unveiling at the upcoming Detroit Auto Show, January 14 of 2018. It was finally going to come out. The Ford person said that this had to keep This had to stay absolutely confidential. An elevator the size of a large room took us down to what looked like the coolest fallout shelter ever. So that's where I got to meet Sean. I got to see him standing by 559, and I was a bit overwhelmed. I was looking at the very car that not only brought me into the Mustang hobby early, but probably was responsible for, I don't know, millions maybe around the world who were like really latched onto at some age the Mustang because of this movie. It was just so cool, and it was so fierce and powerful, and it was like an animal. It was just like a wild animal that just would go after its prey. I mean, it was just spectacular. A crew from Ford and from Kiernan's group started building the camouflage cocoon that would help Ford get 559 into place at the Cobo Center in Detroit for its big unveiling on Sunday. Because the 2018 Bullitt tribute car that Ford was introducing at the Cobo Center was the worst kept secret in Detroit. Tons of leaked 5 photos had come out about it. We all knew it was coming. We were all excited about it, all us crazy Mustang people. The crew went to great lengths to ensure that no one walked into Cobo on Sunday expecting to see the real Bullitt Mustang. So the wheels were covered with cardboard discs. The tires were wrapped with thick, transparent plastic that would prevent the 1970s era tire tread from showing. Blocks of lightweight plastic were strategically placed on top of the hood and deck lid. With an extra large car cover thrown on top and tied, the whole package looked like a small parade float. That Sunday, Sean Kiernan, his son, he fired it up and drove it out from behind a curtain. So from there, the car went around the world, literally, all manner of countries. It was at Goodwood in Great Britain. It's all over the United States at car shows and whatever. It just, I mean, people were crazy about it. It sold for $3.4 million. It wasn't my store anymore. I was happy to see it go. I mean, I was happy to have that snow globe effect where I could look at the whole thing from beginning to end and just be happy, with that. That was my 28 years of silence about 559, and then 2 years of getting to enjoy that it was out in the public and write some more articles, and then see it go to its new home. So that's how I Forrest Gumped my way into Bullitt Mustang history.